Common responses for the month of Av. Habavim Rotova, Stephen Wendy Drazing, honor of Israel Drazing, Dina Drazing, Eileen Rosenzweig, and Stanley Rosenzweig is from the Bracha. Learning sponsors, Dr. Eddie Faith Wolf, information of the yard site of Dr. Wolf's father, Silence Wolf, Shalom Ben Tzvi Hirsch, and Nathan and Beth Adler, memory of their father, Ben Adler, Chaver Baruch Mordechai Ben Moreno, Nasa, as always, is dedicated to learning the sister of his happiness, make yourself and make the bring home. Very interesting piece over here. The members of the household of Rabbi would do as follows. They would borrow Shemitah produce from the poor and then repay them with 8-year produce, non-Shemitah produce on the following year. So if you look at Rashi, it actually says something very interesting. Yasi Perishi is called this Manabir. So obviously, again, without getting into all the Shemitah technicalities out there, but halacha l'maisa, you can go ahead and lend or borrow, not commerce, but lend or borrow Shemitah produce while it's still readily available for everyone. So that's once it's no longer readily available in the field, you can no longer kind of keep it for yourself. So the idea over here is, so the people of the house of Rabbi would borrow Shemitah produce from the Aniyim during the Shemitah. Rashi goes on, part of the Shemitah, so what ended up happening again is on year number 8, the people of Rabbi's house repaid the Aniyim ultimately again with new produce, 8-year produce. So they came and they said, so people mentioned this practice Rabbi Yochanan. There's something about it, obviously, that bothered people. So they said something to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, yeah, listen up, it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. Why? It's net done. Interestingly enough, look at Rashi. You all seen up in stars, a couple of Rashis. You all seen up. Rabbi Yochanan said, the members of the house of the Yanites are acting totally fine. Rashi says, the people that he shaita, lo hadu hanach ba'en, lo ichuse hani da'ani, la chalipe minu, lo chayle kedusha shvizalai. So remember again, we saw yesterday that already. When you get into an issue of potential colors with a forbidden color, so sometimes that forbidden identity can pop on the previously permitted color. So, for example, the concern over here is business that wants to transact the business which meet the produce, then even the 8-year produce should ultimately have choose percentage which meet the produce. Now, the Yochanan said it's not really a problem. Why? Because there's not a reciprocity. There's not immediacy. Or I should say, there's no immediate reciprocity. Because the produce is being taken in the Shemitah and only being quote-unquote repaid during the 8, because there's no immediate reciprocity, therefore this does not look like you're doing commerce with Shemitah produce, and therefore no Shemitah contribution devolves upon the 8-year produce. That's the ideal. Therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, and therefore, again, Shemitah sanctity will not devolve upon the 8-year produce. This is very interesting. And this is connect them to S9. And interestingly enough, a similar piece would come up with S9 zone. S9 zone, if a person goes to a zone and he gives her something for her services, right? Obviously, he pays her money, and he gives her an object. That object is called an S9 zone, a payment for a value, and cannot be used for any type of sacrificial purposes. Makes sense. Listen to this. Tisanyo, Umar says, the corresponding piece for S9, what's the piece? Tisanyo, listen to this. Raisa says, no so marvel about it. Let's say Ruben goes to Rachel. Rachel's his own. Right? Ruben goes to Rachel, and ultimately, again, he gives her this, and he gives her a payment, right? But he doesn't have relations with her. Or, or he has relations with her but doesn't pay her anything. What's the halacha? It's not a mutter. For her, it's payment, ultimately, is mutter for sacrificial use. Obviously, doesn't make sense. Nothing if he gave her, let's say he gave her land, he gave her a sheep, and he didn't have relations with her, then of course it's permitted for a carbon, why pshita, even though Allah he didn't have relations with her. So if he didn't have relations with her, then ultimately again, the land is a gift. If it's a gift, there's no restrictions on it. To which the Gemara says, the soon, furthermore, the second case, if you have relations with her, but he didn't pay her anything, ultimately they pay anything. If he didn't pay her anything, if he didn't know Allah, my estimate, if he didn't know the estimate, makes sense. To which the Gemara says, Allah, this is what he needs to say. No, if he gave her, let's say he gave her the sheep, and then only afterwards, in other words, what would we tell you this piece of outside? When does someone become an S9? When there's transactional immediacy. Behavior, relations. If there is a lack of transactional immediacy, then the payment does not take on the status of S9 solely. And what that means practically is that it's going to be used ultimately, again, let's say, for some type of sacrificial or temple use. So watch this. So most eloquent. No salah, if you give it a sheep, the Afrikas Bala. What does it mean, the Afrikas Bala? Rashi says, Achshav Ella La'achazman. He doesn't have relations with her now. Rather, again, sometime later. Now, of course, how exactly do you go ahead and translate immediacy? I think there's some level of common sense. The days are today, and relations are 3 hours, or tomorrow. Again, as opposed to payment relations. But that's not a look. Oh, Ba'ala, the Achakach Nasara, or for that matter, he has relations with her, and he is ultimately, again, the Esnod is going to be. However, Nasala, the Achakach, so therefore, both sides, what we're saying is as follows, that essentially, in order for something to be categorized as an Esnod, there has to be transactional immediacy. Once the transactional immediacy, in other words, payment relations, then the lamb, the sheep, the payment, has the status ultimately again of a harvest payment. Now again, remember, just to keep track of what's going on over here. So remember, the household of Rabbi, they would borrow Shemitah produce from the poor and repay it ultimately again with 8-year produce. People came to the Yochanan because they felt, I don't know, maybe it looks like a little bit strange, this practice, you're transacting business with Shemitah produce. Which Rabbi Yochanan said, no, it's fine. Why? Same idea. There's no transactional immediacy. So because of transactional immediacy, we don't view that 8-year produce as an exchange, right? Or as somehow like a payment, ultimately again for the 7th-year produce, the Shemitah produce, and after the 8-year produce remains totally fine. Fine. Now the Gemara questions a little bit this Esnon case. So again, let's go through this, right? Let's say he goes ahead and he pays her. Okay, Reuben pays Rachel. He gives her a sheep. I'm just using the sheep because it's the easiest example ultimately again for sacrificial purposes, right? So he pays her a sheep. Right? And then let's say he gives her a sheep on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday he has relations with her. So again, based on what we just learned before, that sheep does not have the status of a harvest payment, and therefore is not forbidden for consecrated temple use. Right? There's a lax transaction in the use. You must understand. When he does have relations with her, let's say on Wednesday, right? He gives the sheep on Tuesday. He has relations with her on Wednesday. So why would we say that when he does have relations with her, top of some Lechol Allah is someone prayer? Obviously, okay, I understand. When he gives it the sheep, it can't be labeled as testimony. But when he does have relations with her on Wednesday, then retroactively, the designation of the sheep as a harvest payment should devolve upon the sheep retroactively. And therefore, the sheep should be categorized as an Eslam zona already as of Tuesday. Rabbi Lazar says, very interesting, what's the case? She should come up. Seems very interesting. What happened? Zona, right? Zona got the sheep on Tuesday. She got the sheep on Tuesday. Now, relations didn't happen until Wednesday. So you are saying that when they have relations on Wednesday, actively the sheep should be categorized as a harvest payment. Oh, what's the case? She offered it up as a carbon on Tuesday. She offered up as a carbon on Tuesday. A pious harvest, a pious zona. I will say, you might say to yourself, come on, what a fake. She's a zona, and she's offering up carbonos. Those inconsistencies. And we all live in terms of contradictions. And in certain respects, I'm something, and in certain respects, I'm Russian. And there are things in my life that I do to all the things that I don't do well or too poorly or don't do it all, and then I'm righteous. Yiddishkeit is not all in you can be righteous in some areas and morally bankrupt in other areas. Now, obviously, that's not the goal, right? The goal is to have a certain level of harmonious spirituality and righteousness in all areas of my life. And most of us are not there. But sometimes we feel hypocritical, or sometimes we feel like a fake, because here, I'm learning Torah, but I'm doing this. Or I'm giving tzedakah, but I'm doing this. Or I'm chesed, but I'm doing this. Right, it is hypocritical. It is still contradictory. But welcome to the nature of the human condition. We all live in hypocrisy. We all live in contradictions. Such is the nature of life. It is important for us not to mistake ourselves. And even though the zona is a zona, she also thinks of it. You know what? I guarantee you, those kabanos are way after it's a pleasing aroma. Because at the end of the day, no one knows our inner conscience, right? And struggles more than and when you still push forward to do good, despite all the things that are broken, sometimes that's the pinnacle of human accomplishment. Great, then, so the Zona offered up the covenants. By the time relations occurred on Wednesday, the animal was already gone. She already offered it up. So you might say, okay, let's analyze this. Let's unpack this. If you tell me what's the case, if he said to the Zona, gives her the lamb on Tuesday and says, this is yours as of today. Right? Acquire this as of today. Right? Then, Halacha, so she could be Sharila, right? The Halasa Bishaskia Umatara Amudia. Obviously, it's multiple, right? Because she has title to it. It can't be categorized as an Esnan on Tuesday because they didn't have relations. Right? So essentially, gave her a gift, and therefore she has every right to offer it up. However, because the role of Malakanid in the action of it's not but if he did not give her permission to acquire it as a word, right? If he was not explicit and said, if he didn't say to her, this is your animal as of now, as of Tuesday, right? They're scheduled for relations on Wednesday. So what does it mean to say? If he gives it to her, it's on Tuesday, and we have relations tomorrow. If that's the case, if he doesn't tell her to acquire it, it's not hers. It's not hers. And if it's not hers, he must be a private. How could you offer it up as a private? After all, Yakish is based on Kodesh Amrachman. The Torah says, if a person will consecrate his home, this is talking about the erech, the evaluation. Right, so we'll go ahead and consecrate his home. Amrachman, I'm not based on issue, so just like your home, you own it. Actual issues, so to the only thing you consecrate, whether it's consecrate or whether it's offer up, is something that you own. In other words, so if she doesn't own it on Tuesday, then how could she offer it up? You can only be makdish something that is yours. Which means, in the realm of personal growth, the Father only asks of us what we're able to do. There's sometimes we make a mistake of measuring ourselves against other people. And that's not necessarily the right thing to do. It's good to have role models, it's not to have people who strive to do that. But a lot of times we kind of compare ourselves to others, and then we're frustrated when we don't measure up. But he says you can measure up to someone else. You don't know what this person's focus. The Ribbon shall only asks you to be makdish that which you own. You only have to consecrate, or you only can consecrate that which you own. You can't consecrate, and it doesn't belong to you. It's you're able to do. He doesn't expect to do what someone else can do. He doesn't expect to be someone else's accomplishments. What he does expect to do is to take a personalistic inventory about all the spiritual tools that I possess. Be honest about what I possess, because you possess a lot more than I'm honest about. And then utilize those in the pursuit of personalistic holiness. Only be makdish that which belongs to you. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu only asks of us to accomplish spiritual things that are within Eladamala. So what's the case? Eladamala, Re'avikabe Achaskia. This is very interesting. So he says to her, right, so Reuben gives to the zone of the sheep. And he says, okay, keep the sheep with you, we're scheduled It'll be tomorrow, right? And just keep it with you until tomorrow. The mitzvah, but if you need the sheep for some reason, that's the same thing comes up. You need the sheep, I don't know, you need a car money, you need dinner, whatever it is. Then Gemara says, "Kani aksha." Then it's really right to acquire it. It's interesting, and that's fine. So Gemara says the sacrifice is not on the academic. The thing is because you can remember this all happened with the Rabbi with this sheep transaction. The idea that's being happening over here is that something can only be vested in committed status when there is a level of transactional intermediacy. So you see that by the Shemitah case, and ultimately you see it by the Eslan zone by the Chalak case. Everyone just gets further into its Chalak case. So by the Kama B'Kusha Sama. It's very interesting. So let's say, same thing. Moving into Zona, the sheep on Tuesday. The Bia is scheduled for Wednesday. On Tuesday, she goes in and she's Makdish. She consecrates it. Now, she didn't offer it up as a partner, but she's Makdish. So what's the status in that idea? Mamish. Even the Amar, Amirasa with the Balkan Sulasa, something technical, is the equivalent of offering it up. In other words, literally, the Gemara says that verbally pledging something to Hektish is the equivalent of giving it over to a regular person. That the act of going ahead and being Makdish verbally is the equivalent of offering it up. In other words, offering it up is offering it up, but being Makdish is gone, the animal's gone. The Makdish ultimately again is also present. So does she have the ability? What happens if she is not fishing? Again, because I must say, here the shiny is, in the case that she offered it up on Tuesday, by the time the year occurs, obviously, again, it's gone. It's gone, right? So it can't be called an Eslan Zona because it was no longer in existence at the time that the year occurred. In this case over here, on Tuesday, she's not fishing. Wednesday, the year occurs, and ultimately, because at the time of the year, the object is still here. So now the shadow is, does the object become an Eslan Zona or not? So the case shall be very uneasy. Because going back to the daf, right? You must so remember again the way Rabbi understood the case of the Eslan Zona, right? Is which went ahead and she already offered it, right? She offered it up already by the time that she occurred. That got a free bustle. So that got because she offered it up is no longer in existence. So low. But from the religious things over here, that if she was not fishing, the animal is clearly now becoming a son of Zola. Much more says no. The Lord says mistakes and quiet. The truth is, this Shaila is not a Shaila of the Lord himself. So the Gemara says, no. And if she could have really on the other, Jackie Bustle, Tata, Bakusha, Solo, is when the animal was offered up before the Bia. And by the time the Bia occurs, the animal is no longer here. But perhaps, again, we're not consecrated. The animal's still in existence at the time of the Bia, in which case, Halacha L'maisa, the animal is recategorized as an Eslan Zona. All your love, if you lost of Shikale, the Kushas on the Sabbath. I mean, maybe obviously she offered not on the phone of the of course, it's not going to be categorized as an Eslan Zona. But in case she just consecrated it, we're not sure. Which the Gemara says taken. So we're not sure. It's interesting, we have to look at what comes out in this case over here is first of all, so it's important that's in the world. We're not finished. We're doing the things that hopefully some categorize must be transactional. If that order is not followed, either payment and delayed PR, or PR and then payment, ultimately again it is not considered to be an estimate zone. If she deposited an animal on, assuming she has rights in one animal, therefore she goes ahead and represent up and identify target. If she's not fishing, she cut off the next day, what's the status of that animal? That's the question. That's the question. Okay, let's analyze it. But if not clearly looks like the second piece of the game was, let's see as it is, right? And then afterwards, he pays her. That's not the love. So ultimately, again, he paid I don't understand this. You might say, community. Bar, the upper happiness. Showing it's not us. For the rest, right? Because if no one has relations with the same, and then he pays you even 3 years late. 3 years late, some people pay all of this world's rent. Right? So he pays so late, right? I'm not going to stop. I'm not pissed off. Look, so most of my country say this important rights that we put in before us on occasion days, he said that if reservations and then payment, that's not an estimate. That's not transactional use. Here the U.S. says that reservations we can push it 2 years later. Conviction. Had the Amar his Ba'ali to tell us that. Had the Amar his Ba'ali so let's say this is very interesting. Ultimately, again, one case of another case that says have relations with me for this sheep, and he identifies the sheep, versus have relations with me for a sheep. Rashi, they tell us that so ultimately, again, the verses when he identifies the sheep, it's as if there's transactional immediacy. When he doesn't go ahead and identify this. Alright, so let's analyze a little bit more. The Allah will tell us that. My hobby, understand. So let's analyze this, right? So now it's Wednesday. We think of God's law. He says, have relations with Zona. He says, have relations with me for this sheep. Now, again, he doesn't pay for 3 years. 3 years, the Allah is, it has the status of identifying the sheep. It doesn't just hers. In order for it to be cursed, what has to happen? The Gemara says, she found. Which I'm going to tell us them about the customer she found. Right? If you remember, livestock, animals were part of the sheep, or part of the sheep. Okay? So apparently he's actually saying, ultimately, the beginning of the sheep was only within by 3 years. So apparently, again, by remind you, they don't need the sheep at their farm. They find that some of them do not. If you don't, they call you the Hatzir. Oh, interestingly enough, the sheep standing in the Hatzir. You get called the Hatzir, but the African Masala, I can't remember for a second. I understand. If it's in her chutzner, this she requires, get relations with her, and then ultimately, again, then you do it, only get it. So in her chutzner, she already acquired it before she is. This is like the paradigmatic case of Esmon. It is acquired the sheep even before the Biyah, if the sheep is standing in her chutzner. The shopping and the very interesting. It really comes to the whole that he says to her, I'm going to pay you. I'm going to pay you for the relations. Right? If I don't pay you money, you can take this sheep. So therefore, she doesn't really require non-payment. The Amar you might see not for the next 30 days, good. The love, and it's not shakli the asnami. Take this sheep, ultimately, again, as you know how English. Fine. Not so much, so Shesha said that, especially in health. Again, it's interesting. All of this is really unraveling to the essence of this process. Omer Adam Lecham Tamara will evolve. Let's say again, let's say, even employees, donkey drivers, and workers. They say that he's paid. Now, the very ultimately, again, is paid, and that actually points out that it's here. Actually, or big problem with Amir Arts. These workers are non-Jews, or they're Amir Arts, which is unwilling. And he says to them, the whole the if would be that. See, you still be that. Right? So what's the law? The inner functions, okay, so that's important. So he goes and he says to them, I'm paying you, right? And essentially, go use this money to go ahead and purchase for yourself food and drink. Okay, either that's your opinions or supplemental or whatever it is. He's getting to get right here's money, go and drink, go and eat. So okay, now the inner functions to do this, inner functions, he doesn't have to be worried. It's not your base 62 Romy shouldn't do this, Romy shouldn't nice, Romy shouldn't nice. And once that, here's the thing about this. right? What's the concern here? The Gemara says that halot l'maisa, he's giving them money. Now, because it's an option or on their side, he has to be concerned that these options going to go by the other. Yes, right? Or maybe ultimately again, the Hamaharet is going by Sneaker, or my Sashimi case, you can swim outside of Yerushalayim. He doesn't have to be concerned. Why doesn't he have to be concerned with this? Because essentially, he's giving them the money, and he's saying, Chevra, do what you want. Do what you want. They do. Rashi says over here, this, right, if you look at the end, if you look at Rashi's Romishim Meiser, right, if you look at Rashi, it's actually the last one, the last of the long one. You don't, moving is not the one thing you what you choose to do with that afterwards, essentially, is not unmoving. It's not unmoving. So therefore, again, no liability. Okay, now what? Contract are the following is. Sabbath they 60 degrees, second line down. Give Orla, said to them, Su be'iflu, vani horea, like these drivers, go and eat, go and drink, and I'll pay. I'll pick up the tab. All. Now this is a problem. Oshish, Mishum, Shlias, Mishum, Mishum, then we have the problem. Then we have a problem. Now, why is that? We can actually go to Vani horea. Habitu lokeach ha'isur ma'pilo, the hashtal will start naturally in the issue over here because he's going to have, now it looks like he's purchasing and providing these prohibited items for his wife. You see the difference? If Reuben just says, here's $100 for your food and drink, whatever they buy, that's on them. If he says, go eat, go drink, I'll pick up the tab, then ultimately, again, that is problematic because if he is purchasing and providing these potentially prohibited items for his wife. Omar, what do you see from there? So what you see from here is that halacha l'maisa, I'm not going to look at this. We're now going ahead and circling back to the Rabbi case, right? We're going back now ultimately again to the Rabbi case. Remember, Rabbi, what did they do? They went ahead and they borrowed the produce and they repaid for the 8 euros. I said, now the problem is no transaction immediacy. So listen, what do you see now? What do you see from this last piece over here? Amo, he kapara, maybe so kapara. So what do you see from here? That when Reuben pays the bill, right? Pays the bill. So even though again he's paying after the consumption already took place, Allah said this transaction immediacy, and he is considered to be paying for these shemitah produce, sheni produce, it's problematic. Therefore, the Gemara says, often that means he kapara, the maybe say kapara. So to here by the other and maybe we came here, ultimately again, isn't that paying for shemitah produce? Same thing. Which we must take the Gemara Christo, the Kentani Hama people, the Mishkabel. You know, it's different. Right? If he's going ahead and the workers, and workers. Go drink, I'll pick up the tab. We're talking about where they are purchasing food from a shopkeeper who normally extends credit to them. The Chayim, the Arthilach, they plainly do not have it. Ultimately, because the shopkeeper normally extends credit to them, ultimately there is transactional immediacy. Literally translated, literally the shopkeeper acquires his money immediately. Look at Rashi just a moment. Finally, it's actually right across from Rashi. The shopkeeper knows that he's going to get paid from you. He regularly extends credit. So that's it. There is transaction immediacy. Reuben is not just saying stand going where you want and buy food, buy drinks. He's saying, Pedro, go to the shopkeeper, I'll pick up the tab. This is a shopkeeper who normally extends credit to Reuben. So therefore, again, it's as if the debt is already paid, and therefore there is transactional immediacy that's happening. It's just that. Rashi says over here, Therefore, it's going to be almost like an exchange, right? The shopkeeper is going to give donkey driver and whatever they want for the leverage, and Ruben's going to immediately pay for that. לא חכם יתנו, אבל חלק מלוויינאי, כיוון דהנה חני, במוסים חני, but חני ירדו, because again, that doesn't apply in the case of right? This wasn't like a credit situation. Therefore, that case is fine because of that transactional release. But again, using that logic, if we're going to send out his workers, same case, go eat and go drink, don't pick up the tab. But now he's not sending to a shopkeeper who normally expense credit to him, then it sounds like what? Mutter, and that should be okay. If that's the case, that it's mutter, Ilafi, I would tell you, if that's the case, then set the price up different. Here's $100. Go out and go drink. Make it two different things. What should the two cases be? When is this so ultimately again prohibited? When is it prohibited for Ruben to say to his workers, go out and go eat and drink, and I'll pick up the tab? That's only with the shopkeeper who extends because this transactional immediacy, and it's as if again we're saying we already have the money to the big items. But the shopkeeper who does not extend it, therefore that lacks transactional immediacy, and that case should be called. In other words, better for the price to go ahead and highlight two cases that are the same, but one detail different, than to highlight two dramatically different cases. Is that true? Even if the shopkeeper doesn't extend credit, is the purchaser not still obligated to defend the family? The person says to his friend, King one of the phony, so what happens? So right, Ruben goes, all right, I go over to Ruben. Say, Ruben, do me a favor, give him money to Shimon, give money to Shimon, and ultimately, again, my property becomes encumbered as a guarantor. Now again, let's even assume that Ruben and I have no previous relationship. So what do you see there? When you ask someone to go and do something to someone else, and ultimately, again, you're guaranteed it, and encumbrance that transactional needs cease to occur right down there. You're right. You're right. At the end of the day, whether the shopkeeper extends credit or doesn't extend credit, doesn't seem to make a difference. You must worship אף אגב במשאב even below miyachid shibude lo nissa. So what's the difference? Look at Rashi. Rashi says even below miyachid shibude, Rashi third wide Rashi's about him. So when we say lo miyachid most love comes to since Ruben did not go ahead and actively set aside money, right? He's telling his workers, go out, go eat and drink, I'll pick up the tab. Since no defined amount of money, right, or no specific money has been set aside for that, therefore, again, that lacks transactional needs. Because it does ultimately, again, it should be mutter. שלא ייחי למוז לכך רק חליק ממנו ולא נפסק. Sorry, the Gemara says, Ela Afa Amachish. So that's the case again. So what do you need to be concerned about? You should shvius. So the Gemara says, it's all Romia, which would be hot. So ultimately, again, says the Gemara, ultimately, again, what do you have to be concerned about? Ela Afa, Michael Shish. You should shvius. What do you have to be concerned about over here? The Halacha Lamaisa, that perhaps, again, Shvius or Reese, must Homo Yachid Shvius. Haka, Lo Yachid Shvius. Ultimately, again, it's the same thing. Halacha Lamaisa, because no particular money is designated for that, is not changing the Reese, you don't predict him what he is. What's the case? The case over here is where the Balabayas advance the money to the family. Bayas, you know the family. Hold them Shashalas Etzlo. The Hashtam, the Balabayas, Ta'afi, and so forth. So this changes everything. So the case over here, ultimately, again, when Bryce says that and says to his workers, go to the company, go to the shopkeeper, eat and drink whatever you want on me. The case is already moving the money to the shopkeeper. So there's no extension of credit. In other words, he has a tab, but it's paid for already. Oh, so now that makes sense. Because now that it's paid for already, ultimately, they take limited things. It's literally like he's supplying them with limited items. Look, I know. I'm me so much like they can make like limited items. So the Gemara says, so I kind of say this. So again, all of this is all in the same transaction needs. Like that's the thing that's happening. So the Gemara says, I'm not you don't share. I'm sorry, I'm not sorry. I'm used to places and these loves leaving out. The kind of said I said this over, who come to love the bit of marriage. And what happened? I'm not ready. He hustled, I became certainly you should see by Nikolai at that case. The prices shouldn't be that we've been sexually workers. Go out and eat, go out and drink, and I will pay. I will pay you for some of you as a pay. Rather, what should it say? Certainly better food, certainly you should see by the cash. You should say go out and drink, go out and eat. And then I'll settle up. Right? I'll settle up ultimately again with the shop. Because again, we're saying that in case of years that we didn't do pay. Right? I'll let you $100. How much should we consume? So it's going to be right. So you're right. Tony, I'm like, Tony, not in the country. Again, a lot of ways is you're right. Change the license, leave the license, a lot of ways are giving testimony. So six remember, essentially there are two things in regards. Case number one is your leading use is represented by. It's kind of go out and eat, go out and drink. It's not the way you must understand it now. Is that a lot of ways are moving free. When I give $100 to the shopkeeper, he said, my worker's going to come in, let them buy, let them eat, let them drink. Okay? Now the Gemara says that's the problem. You have to be concerned. If we have access now to these food items, Reading is going ahead and the go out and drink, but I need my conscience. I will settle up ultimately against the shop. Where everyone what about? Basically, one of the great satisfactions to be able to learn is probably begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this volunteer. Thank our annual Talmud Torah sponsor, Tosim Shpach of Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all the Shuman Drushos this year as a success for the summer troubles for all of Yisrael. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Av, Habalim October, Stephen Wendy Jason, and the Roses Spices from the Bracha. We got many sponsors, Dr. Eddie K. Wolf, the Nation of the Earth, and Nathan and Beth Howard, memory of their father, Ben Azar, covered Baruch Mordechai Ben Moreno, and Nassan, as always, we dedicate our name in the Swiss Shalom and the Torah and miracle and social give them success. The whole and mercy. Those who got that speaking there, the exciting daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Son of Gimel 63, and we are picking up on Son of Base in the base 62b, the day Rabbi Yana, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 lines on the line. In Mars is as follows. The day Rabbi Yana, yes, we can see us in the part of the so very interesting piece over here. The members of the household of Rabbi Yana would do as follows. They would borrow used up produce from the poor, and then repay them with 8-year produce, non-shemitah produce on the following year. So if you look at Rashi, Rashi says over this in a very interesting way. Yasi Perishi is called in Smanabir. So obviously, again, without getting into all the shemitah technicalities over here, but halacha l'maisa, you can go ahead and lend or borrow, not commerce, but lend or borrow shemitah produce while it's still readily available for everyone. So these guys, once it's no longer readily available, so the idea would be, so the people of the house of Rabbi would borrow shemitah produce from the Aniyim during the shemitah year. Rashi goes on, part of the shemitah, so what ends up happening again is on year number 8, the people of Rabbi household repaid the Aniyim. So they came and they said, so people mentioned this practice Rabbi Yochanan. There's something about it, obviously, that bothered people to some degree. So they said something to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, you always seen up in perfectly fine. Look at Rashi, you always seen up in Sarah. You always seen up in there. Rabbi Yochanan said, the members of the house of Rabbi Yochanan, Ishayta, Lo Habu Hanach Ba'en, Lo Rufe Han Ba'ani, La Khalif Benenu, who's getting to issue potential commerce with a forbidden item. So sometimes that forbidden identity can pop on previously permitted. So, for example, that even the 8-year produce should ultimately have shemitah sanctity, shemitah prohibition. The Yochanan said it's not really a problem. Why? Because there's not reciprocity. Because the produce is being taken during the shemitah year, there's reciprocity. Therefore, this does not look like you're doing commerce with shemitah produce, and therefore no shemitah prohibition devolves upon the 8-year produce. That's the idea of it. Therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, and therefore, again, shemitah sanctity will not develop upon the 8-year produce. Since we not similar case, we come up with esnams. Esnams mean a person goes to a salon and he gives her something for her services, right? Obviously, the occasion was a and cannot be used for any type of sacrificial purposes. Makes sense. Listen to this. The Samuel, the Mark says, the corresponding piece for esnam was the case. The sounds into this. Rashi says, let's say Reuben goes to Rachel. Rachel's his own. Like Reuben goes to Rachel, and ultimately, again, he gives her payment, right? But he doesn't have relations with her. Or what's halacha esnano for her it's payment ultimately is not for sacrificial use. Obviously, it doesn't make sense. If he gave her, let's say he gave her a lamb, he gave her a sheep, and he didn't have a relationship with her, and of course it's permitted for a carbon, but sheep is giving her a lamb, again, the lamb is a gift. It's a gift, there's no restrictions on it, to which the Gemara says, I'm sorry, I found all of it the Sue, furthermore, the second case, but for that, he had a relationship with her, he didn't pay her anything, ultimately, he didn't pay her anything. If he didn't pay her anything, even though my estimate if he didn't pay her anything, what's the meaning of the statement from Raisa that says that the estimate is mutter? It doesn't make any sense. For which the Gemara says, hello, rather this one needs to say, listen to this. If he gave her, let's say he gave her the sheep, and then only afterwards, in other words, what you can take is this outside. Simply what you're going to say like this. When does something become an esnod, and esnod is when a part is payment, when there's transactional immediacy. These are relations, right? Our relations pay. In other words, when there's immediacy, that's when it's an esnod. If there is a lack of transactional immediacy, then the payment does not take on the status of esnod solely. And what that means practically is that it can be used ultimately, again, let's say for some type of sacrificial or temple use. So watch this. So there's other comment. No someone, if you gave it a sheep, the African ball. Now what does it mean, the African ball? Rashi says, Achshav Elo La'achazman. He doesn't have relations with her now. Rather, again, sometime later. Now, immediacy, I think there's some more common sense here. Because with today, he has relations with her in 3 hours. Or tomorrow, again, as opposed to payment, relations. Oh, Bala, the Africa Nasara, or for that matter, he has relations with her, and then he releases her, Esnona and Mutter. In both of these cases, ultimately again, the Esnona is going to be Mutter. However, Nasara, the Africa is not fine. Therefore, I will say, the one thing is as follows. That essentially, in order for something to be categorized as an estimate zone, there has to be transactional immediacy. Once the transactional immediacy, in other words, payment relations, then the land, the sheep, the payment, has the status ultimately again of a harvest payment. Now again, remember, just to keep track of what's going on here. So remember, the household of Ordiana is looking to be open because I don't know, maybe it's like a little strange practice, that's in business. I said, no, it's fine. Why? Same idea. There's no transactional immediacy. So because of transactional immediacy, we don't view that your produce as an exchange, right? Or as somehow as a payment ultimately again from 7 times. Now the Gemara questions a little bit this estimate piece. No someone Africa's bought, but again, let's go with this, right? Let's say he goes ahead and he pays for it. Okay, you're going to use Rabbi. He gets your sheep. I'm just using the sheep because it's the easiest example of himself. Right? So he gives your sheep. Right? And then let's say he gives your sheep on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday he has your sheep. So again, based on what we just learned before, that sheep does not have the status of a harvest payment, and therefore is not forbidden for consecrated temple. Right? Because it lacks transactional immediacy. Let's say on Wednesday, right? You the sheep on Tuesday. He has relations with her on Wednesday. So why don't we say that when he does have relations with her, Rechel Allah is such she can't be labeled as testimony Allah. It's not and when he does have relations with her on Wednesday, then retroactively the designation of the sheep as a harvest payment should devolve upon the sheep retroactively. And therefore the sheep should be categorized as an estimate already as of Tuesday. Rabbi Lazar says, it's very interesting, what's the case? She should come up the Hikri Basa. This is very interesting. What happened? The Zona, right? The Zona got the sheep on Tuesday. Got the sheep on Tuesday. Now, relations didn't happen until Wednesday. We are saying that when they have relations on Wednesday, actively the sheep should be categorized as a harvest payment. Oh, what's the case? She offered it up as a carbon on Tuesday. She offered up as a carbon on Tuesday. A pious harvest, a pious zona. I must say, you might say to yourself, come on, what a fake. She's a zona, and she's offering up carbonas. Let's say it's many. So this is my case that we all look at consistencies, and we all live within her calculations, and in certain respects, I'm excited, in certain respects, I'm emotional. And there are things in my life that I do very well, and there are things in my life that okay, well, guess what? I'm going to tell everything, including the fact that the things that I don't do well, or do poorly, or don't do at all, are Hashem. It's not all of it. You can be righteous in some areas, and more bankrupt in other areas. Now, obviously, that's not the goal, right? The goal is to have a certain level of harmonious spirituality and righteousness in all areas of our life. And most of us are not here. Sometimes we feel hypocritical. Sometimes we feel like a fake because here, I'm learning Torah, but I'm doing this. I'm giving tzedakah, but I'm doing this. I'm chesed, but I'm doing this. Right, it is hypocritical. It is more contradictory, but while contradictions, such is the nature of life. It is important for us not to lose faith in ourselves. That even though the zona is a zona, but she also brings problems. You know what? I guarantee those kabbalas are a real it's appeasing the Lord. Because at the end of the day, no one knows our inner contradicts, our inner struggles, and other and we still push forward to do good. In any event, so the Zona offered up the garments. By the time relations occurred on Wednesday, okay, let's unpack this a little bit. What's the case? If he said to the Zona, gives her the lamb on Tuesday and says, this is yours as of today. Right? it is as of today, right? Then Halacha Masim Shita the Sharila, right? The Halasa, right? She has title to it. It can't be categorized as an Eslam on Tuesday because they didn't have relations, right? So essentially, he gave her a gift, and therefore she has every right to offer it up. However, the law on the Lachanim in the Aksha is not in the time. Why would he now? And if he was not explicit and said, and he didn't say to her, this is your animal as of now, as of Tuesday, right? There's, what does it mean to say? If he gives it to her, he gives it to her on Tuesday, okay, we're going to have relations tomorrow. And that's, and if it's not her, it's making Matzim Khan. I push up as a part of the Ish Kiyak Vision says so published on Rahman. The Torah says, if a person will consecrate his home, this is talking about the Erech now, based on the Shusel, just like your home, you own it, Ach Kol B'Shusel, so to the only you consecrate, whether it's consecrated or whether it's not for us, is something that you own. In other words, if she doesn't own it on Tuesday, then how could you offer it as a part unless it's 5 minutes, or maybe it's not the most customary. You know, you can only be makdish something that is yours. Which means, in the realm of personal growth, Kadosh Baruch Hu only asks of us what we're able to do. You know, sometimes we make the mistake of measuring ourselves against other people. And that's not necessarily the right thing to do. It's good to have role models. It's good to have people we aspire to be like. But a lot of times we kind of compare ourselves to others, and then we're frustrated when we don't measure up. But who says you can measure up to someone else? You don't know what this person's purpose or their abilities are. The Ribono Shel Olam only asks you to be makdish that which you own. You only have to consecrate, or you only can consecrate that which you own. You can't consecrate something that doesn't belong to you. We so often in life we forget that he doesn't expect of me what someone else to do. He doesn't expect of me someone else's accomplishments. What he does expect of me is to take a personalistic about all the spiritual tools that I possess. Be honest about what I possess, because we possess a lot more than we're honest about. And then utilize those in the pursuit of personalistic beliefs. You can only be makdish that which belongs to you. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu only asks of us to accomplish spiritual things that are within our purview, in our power, within our spiritual dialogue. This is very interesting. So he says to her, right, so Reuben gives this to the zone of the sheep on Tuesday, and he says, okay, keep the sheep with you, the schedule to be here tomorrow, right, and just keep it with you until tomorrow. The mixture of things, but if you need the sheep for some reason, let's say something comes up, you need the sheep, I don't know, you need a car, whether you need to know whatever it is, then the Gemara says, then I give you the right to acquire it. It's fine. So the Gemara says, so there was it, that's the zone. Now again, what's the idea? Why we do this? Besides the fact that it's totally we're doing this because you can remember this all happened with the Rabbi with this Shiva transaction. The idea that's kind of happening over here is that something can only be vested in permitted status when there is a level of transactional use. So now we see that by the Shemitah case, and ultimately we see it by the Esron Zona, by the Harlot case as well. That emerges before the Harlot case. It's very interesting. So let's say, so the same thing. Reuben gives Zona the sheep on Tuesday. The Bia is scheduled for Wednesday. On Tuesday, she goes in and she's not. She consecrates it. She didn't offer it up to the Torah. And she's not fishing. So what's the status now of the animal? Even the Amamar, and the Russell of the above, and the Russell of the Kiman Daki Vasi Haman. So do you say that essentially making something hektish is the equivalent of offering it up? In other words, literally the Gemara says that verbally pledging something to hektish is the equivalent of giving it over to a regular person. That the act of going ahead and doing makdish verbally is the equivalent of offering it up. In other words, in makdish, ultimately again, it is still present. So does she have the ability? What happens if she is makdish? Again, we're going to say, you heard the shayla is, in the case where she offered it up on Tuesday, by the time the deal occurs, obviously, again, it's gone. It's gone, right? So it can't be called an Eslam Zona because it was no longer in existence at the time that the deal occurred. In this case over here, on Tuesday, she's makdish. Wednesday the Bia occurs, and ultimately, so at the time of the Bia, the object is still here. So now the Shaila is, does the object become an Esraiso or not? So the Tif Shamid Rabbi Eliezer. Because so I say going back, Shekabma Behikri Basa. So remember again, the way Rabbi Eliezer understood the case of the Esraiso Zona, right, is where she went ahead and the occurred. That's Behikri Basa. So that's right, because she offered it up as no longer in existence. How about the Shaso? No. But from Rabbi Eliezer statement that would appear that if she was not fished, but the animal was still in existence at the time that the Bia occurred, perhaps the animal would now be called an Esraiso Zona. Much the Gemara says, no, the Rabbi Elazar would say, "Coming by it." This actually, this Shaila is Mamish Shaila of Elazar himself. So the Gemara says, "Nine. Mifshak Shutei Rabbi Eliezer that the Basal Davka Baki Shasa Lo that Isa B'Shasvia." Does Rabbi Elazar say that the only time it doesn't become an Esraiso is when the animal was offered up before the Bia? Because by the time the Bia occurs, the animal is no longer here. But perhaps again, she was just not consecrated. The animal still in existence. In which case, halacha l'maisa, the animal is recategorized as an Esraiso Zona. Of Yoma, if the bus of Shitale, if the Shasa is Sakura, and you know, maybe obviously she offered it up and it's only going to test. And you know, of course, it's not going to be categorized as an Esraiso Zona. But in case she just consecrated it, we're not sure. Which the Gemara says take it. So we're really not sure. So interestingly enough, I will say, what comes out in this case over here is, first of all, so people understand is that in order for something to be categorized as an Esraiso Zona, there must be transactional immediacy. If that order is not followed, either payment and delayed Bia, or Bia and then payment, ultimately, again, it is not considered to be an Esraiso Zona. If he deposited an animal for payment, now, the deal doesn't occur until later on, assuming she has rights to that animal, therefore, she goes ahead and she offers it up, it's a bona fide cargo. If she's not dishing, she consecrates it, and so the animal is still in existence at the time of the Bia, the next day. Okay, let's analyze it. So when again, let's say the second piece over here was, let's say he has relations with her, and then he came in his mutter. When we say it's mutter, it means it can be used for. I don't understand this. The Gemara says, for minzim. Ba'ala bi'achakach masana, even the hashalosh shonim esnara asa. So the Rabbi says if a woman has relations with his son, and then he pays her, even 3 years late, some people pay for her, it's still called the harlot's payment, and it's still the asa, and I'm not pissed off, lokasha. So listen, that contradicts just important. The rights that we told before, in number 62, we said that if there's relations and then payment, that's not an estimate, it's no transactional use. Here the Gemara says that there's relations in the case of the units number, ultimately it is for asa, and I'm not going to stop, I'm not just going to kasha. It's not a contradiction. Had the Amar is Ba'ali Li, it's Ba'ali Li, the Tawazah. Had the Amar is Ba'ali Li, the Tawazah. So let's say this is very interesting. Ultimately, again, so we're talking one case in another case where it says, have relations with me for this Sheishi, Rashi, the Tawazah, how come that you have Rabi Esman in the hashtag? So ultimately, again, the Gemara says when he identifies the sheep, it's as if there is transactional immediacy. When he doesn't go ahead and identify the sheep, then ultimately, again, there is no transactional immediacy. All right, so let's analyze it. We'll analyze this, right? So now, it's Wednesday. We bring those over to Rabbi. He says, have relations to Zona. He says, have relations with me for this sheep. Now, but yeah, he doesn't pay her for 3 years. 3 years. The halacha is, it has the status of a public payment because this transaction means just because he identified the sheep as he I'm going to call his right? Remember, livestock, animals require sheep, require possession, which the Gemara says is zone. Okay, so apparently it's actually interesting. But ultimately, they did have Mashiach as only Jew. They don't need Mashiach to far. So the zone is not Jewish. You guys know the hospital is. The old one was on Israel. So I was talking about giving up the sheep standing in their castle. In which case, again, ultimately, there's the such a sheep fires. Exactly. I understand. If it's in our thoughts, in our this requires it. In order to get a relationship with her, ultimately, again, denigrating. It's already in our thoughts, it's already required it. Talking about. You must, in other words, she acquired it before it. So this is actually, this is like the parent magistrates acquiring the sheep even before the Bia, if the sheep is standing in our process. Which the ROTHSCHILD, the shocking and handy apple. Very interesting. Now, here's the case. So Ruben comes to Raphael and this sheep is in a post. And then they go to the post. Your post essentially takes advantage of it. He says to her, I'm going to pay you. I'm going to pay you for the relations. Right? If I don't pay you money, you should take this sheep. Therefore, she doesn't really require the sheep initially. She requires the sheep in the event that there is non-payment. The Amallah, he might see. He says to her, if I pay you, let's say, for the next 30 days, good. And again, as you know, how we're talking, fine. Massive Sheshes. Sheshes like this. Mostly need some help. Again, it's interesting. All of this is really unravels to me as things like this. Watch this. Let's say again, let's say Ruben employs donkey drivers and workers. Okay, so now he's paying. Now the way ultimately again he's paying them. Now actually points out over here, these workers are non-Jews or they're Amir. They're just unlearned Jews. Idolaters are unlearned Jews. And he says to them, right? So what's the halacha? The Enoch Oshesh, okay, so actually before that. So he goes in to them, he said to them, I'm paying you, guys. Essentially, go use this money to go and purchase for yourself food and drink. Okay, you do that. Okay, you're going to supplement what he's giving them here, right? Here's money. Go and drink, go and eat. So what's not to be doing? Something like this, 63 weeks. Lo mishum shvius and lo mishum ma'aser, lo mishum yayah. And what's that? The Gemara says that halacha l'maisa, he's giving money. Now, because it's an apple, on that part, here's the apple is going to go by now, yes? Right? Or maybe, ultimately, again, or my shitty parties, which may not sound like he doesn't have to be concerned with this. We have to be concerned with this. Because essentially, he's giving me money is huge ones. Because he's doing that, it's not on him. Whatever they do, they do. Rashi says over here, after Rashi just goes through all of this. But if you look at the end, Rashi, lo mishum ma'aser. Right, if you look at last week, the heart, it's actually the last one, the last of the one line. The heart easy, or something will be, and like we don't use Ruben is not the one giving us the Ruben's giving them. It's kind of here, this is for your food, this is for your drink. What they choose to do with that afterwards, essentially, is not on Ruben. It's not on Ruben, so therefore, again, no liability. Okay, now Sabbath Yom second line down. He says to the workers, like taxi drivers, go and eat, go and drink, and I'll pay. I'll pick up the tab. Oh, now this is a problem. Then we have a problem. Now, why is that? We did not. We did not in Torah. לוקח האיסור מאכילו, והשתו מסולת נפשי לב. The issue over here is because he's paying the tab, now it looks like he's purchasing and providing the items for his work. See the difference? If Reuben just says, here's $100 for your food and drink, whatever they buy, that's all. Maybe I have. Have you ever talked to somebody? If he says, go eat, go drink, I'll pick up the tab, and ultimately, again, that is problematic because he is purchasing and providing potentially prohibited items for his parents. Alma, that wasn't what do you see from the work? He cuts her. It's like, so just you don't respect me. This is we're now going ahead and circling back to the Rabbi case, right? We're going back now ultimately again to the Rabbi case. Remember, Rabbi, what did they do? They went ahead and they borrowed the produce and they paid for it with your shoes. Yochanan said, not a problem, no transaction. Amok, kapara, the Mr. Kapara. So what is he doing? That Reuben pays the bill. I pays the bill. Even though, again, he's paying after the consumption already took place. A local answer is transactional, you see, and he is considered to be paying for these the produce, shady focus to the it's problematic. Therefore, the Gemara says, also now means Kapara, the Mr. Kapara. The social leader by the lady paying here, ultimately, again, is in debt for Kapara. Same thing. Which we must take them out of his stuff. They think they have to come. People didn't stop this. So no, it's different. In the Reuben case, right, he's going ahead and telling the workers, go eat, go drink, I'll pick up the tab, talking about where they are purchasing food from a shopkeeper who normally extends credit to you. The ugly laugh today, clearly dinner today. Ultimately, because the shopkeeper normally extends credit to Reuben, ultimately there is transaction. That's happening right here. Literally translated, literally the shopkeeper acquires his money immediately. Look at that. Clearly, it's actually right across the left. The shopkeeper knows that he's going to get the money because he regularly extends credit. So let's say that's a transaction. Reuben's not just saying stand where you want and buy food, buy drink. He's saying go to the shopkeeper, I'll pick up the tab. This is a shopkeeper who normally extends credit to Reuben. So therefore, again, it's as if the debt is already paid, and therefore there is transactional immediacy that's happening. Rashi says over here, therefore it's almost like an exchange, right? The shopkeeper is going to give, and Reuben is going to immediately pay. No, check it out. But again, that doesn't apply to the right? It wasn't therefore, that case is trying to last transaction. Again, using that even with the send out of work, same case, go you can go to your local tab. But now he's not sending to a shopkeeper should be okay. If that's the case, that's most of the lucky, I determined to the issue of the So only Shisu the dinner that, if that's the case, then set the Vaisa up differently. Instead of making a first case of the Vaisa, the case of where Ruben says, here's $100, go out and go drink, make it two different things. Look, when is this so ultimately again that it's prohibited? When is it prohibited for Ruben to say to his daughter, you don't even drink, and I'll pick up the tab, that's only with the shot people who extends credit for Ruben, because there's transactional immediacy. How about friendly Shema people, but not people who do not extend to should be called. In other words, better to the rice to go ahead and highlight two pieces that are the same, but one piece like this one, and to highlight people that are on the cases. Those must go, anybody Shema people, we don't have it, even if the shopkeeper does not send credit, is the purchaser not still obligated to any dollar of it? Homer the Cabero. Presents to his friend. Presents to his friend. Hey, one of the phone. Be from the fussy love. What happens? Right? Ruben goes, right, I got it for you. So Ruben, give me a favor. Right, give him money to Shimon. And all of my property will be coming over to you. What's that? Currently, you know what? What do you see here? Now, again, let's even assume that even and I have no previous. And you ask someone to run with someone else. And ultimately, again, you're guaranteed that incumbents that transactional immediacy cease to look for right now. I'm a Rabbi. You're right. At the end of the day, whether the shopkeeper extends credit or doesn't extend credit, doesn't make sense. אף אגב במשאב אלי, כיוון דלא מיחיד שיבודי לא מסר. So what's the Rashi? Third wide line in Rashi's in the bottom. כיוון שיבודי, שלא ייחי לו מיד מעוז לכך, לאו חלילה, and actively set aside money for this, right? He's telling his workers, go out, go eat and drink, I'll pick up the tab. Since no defined amount of money, right, or no specific money has been set aside for that, therefore, again, that should be mutter. Should be mutter. So no yichim and ma'os l'kach, lav chalik olinu below mitzvah. Ultimately, again, so what do we take this from that? We should shvius. So the must is hot, no meat, which should be hot. So ultimately, again, the something of that. Ultimately, again, we have to be concerned about my quotation. Mishum shvius, what do you have to be concerned about over here? Allah from my side. That perhaps, again, should be at least versus Hallelujah, which he did it, Shekakah, Hallelujah, which he did it, ultimately, again, it's the same thing. Allah from the Mesa, because no particular money is designated for advance, is not stated as a use, and you're going to hit the Lord. What's the case? The case over here is where the halakha is advance the money to the company. Okay, so this change. Rashi, shifting low. Halakha is dinner the company. Hogem sheshalach etzlo. The hashtag the halakha is
Wait a minute to hear about John.
so we are ultimately again prices that Ruben says to his workers, go to the family, go to the shopkeeper, eat and drink whatever you want on me, because you already Ruben gave the money to the shopkeeper. So there's no extension of credit. In other words, yes, but it's paid for already. So now that makes sense, because now that it's paid for already, ultimately, again, if they pay limited things, it's literally like he's supplying them with limited. I'm not gonna. I'm just so distracted. I think that's really gonna go. So the Gemara says as follows. So it's all in this same round. That's happening. That's not what says. I'm sorry. Amisa the Shmite can eat us in here. The Colonel said, I said this over in front of the bit of America. And what happened? I'm not he hugged me at the time. This is going to be so you see Vanny or a cat. The vice shouldn't be there. He says to his workers, go out and drink, and I will pay. I will pay you 600 as a pay. Rather, what should it say? Soup out and drink, go out and eat, and then I'll settle off. Like, I'll settle off ultimately again with the shopkeeper. Because again, we're saying now the case on here where we didn't should pay. Right? So we left money with the shopkeeper, and then it's a question of saying, yeah, I left you $100. How much should we concern? You're right. Sorry. Ultimately, again, a lot of nice is be right. Change the basic device. A lot of nice are proven systems. So please remember, essentially there are two cases in verse. Case number one is where Ruben gives his representative $100. So several go out and eat, go out and drink on me. That case, whatever they do, it's on them. It's not on me. Case two, the way the Muslim is now, is that halacha myself, Ruben free halacha going to come in, let them buy, let them eat, let them drink. Okay? And if they have access now to the items, and if Ruben is going ahead and supplying from the way that price should read is Ruben says to his workers, Silva, go out and drink, but I need a contract. And I will settle off ultimately again with the contract. That's what we're going to do. Yeah, looks like we'll stop over for today. Oh yeah, everyone, get it down. I'm up over here. Everyone, Cutter's right here. Esse comune is a great spot to be able to learn from his youth, begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this year. To thank our annual council sponsor, Kofi Shbaka itself, for dedicated additional brushes this year. As a support for the first doubles for all of Israel. And co-sponsors for the month of Av. Abba Linder told us even when the grazing honor of Tito's grazing, Dina grazing, Eileen Roses White, and Stanley Roses White for the Bracha. We got our sponsors, Dr. Faith Wolf, the Green of the yard site of Dr. Wolf's father, Cyrus Wolf, Shalom, Ben Steve Hirsch, and Nick Gizmo, that kind of the limit of your father. And as a cover for part of modified and marine nonsense from the because always be dedicated to our the specific conscious act, which is in the program of the Shabbat home, the Shalom and the current of the Merkah, the social to give them success and follow and mercy. I was saying that. We have an exciting daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Son of Guinness. We are not on south facing base 62b. Today, Rabbi Yana, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 12 lines up from the bottom. So the verse is as follows. Today, Rabbi Yana, Yas Viperi is not. The members of the household of Rabbi do as follows. They would borrow Shemitah produce from the poor and then repay them with 8th-year produce, non-Shemitah produce. Yasi Perishi is called in Ismail. So obviously, again, without getting into all the Shemitah technicalities of it, but halacha l'maisa, you can go ahead and lend or borrow, not commerce, but once it's no longer readily available field, you really can no longer keep it for yourself. So the idea over here is, so the people of the house of Rabbi would follow Shemitah produce from the Aniyim during the Shemitah year. Actually, that's part of the Shemitah. Often, I mean, in Shminis after a year, you can shlias. So what ends up happening again is on year number 8, people again are supposed to repay the ultimately again with year produce, 8-year produce. So they came and they said, so people mentioned this practice Rabbi Yochanan. There's something about it, obviously, that bothered people to some degree. So they said something to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, yeah, listen, it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. Why? Connect done. You also know, the Yochanan said, the members of the house of the Avianites are acting totally fine. Rashi says, the people that he shaita, love Chalucha Minu, will hire to do Shashris on us. We saw in yesterday's daf already. When you get into an issue, is that forbidden identity to call upon the previously committed crime. Which means the produce, that even the 8-year produce should ultimately have the same for the prohibition. But the Yochanan said it's not really a problem. Why? Because there's not a recipe, there's not immediacy, or I should say, there, and only being quote unquote repaid for year 8, because there's no immediate reciprocity. Therefore, this does not look like you're doing commerce with sheep of produce, and therefore no sheep prohibition devolves upon the 8-year produce. That's the ideal here. Therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, and therefore, again, shmita sanctity will not follow upon the 8-year produce. This is very interesting. Connect them to Esla. And interestingly enough, a similar case would come up with Esnon Zon. Esnon Zon is a local person goes to a zone and she gives her something for her services. Right? Obviously, she pays her money, or even gives her an object. That object is called an Esnon Zon. The payment for a harlot comes. Listen to this. The sign up, you must be the corresponding defense and what's the sign of this. Rashi says, Nosam Rabbi Labala. Let's say Ruben goes to Rachel's home. He gives her a payment, but he doesn't pay her. Or, on the half of Nosam, or he has relations with her but doesn't pay her anything. What's the halacha? Esnana mutter. Her harlot's payment ultimately is mutter. Obviously, it doesn't make sense. I don't say. If he gave her, let's say he gave her land, gave her a sheep, and he didn't have relations with her, then of course it's permitted for a husband's wife sheep that given the Labala, he had relations with her. So if he didn't have relations with her, then ultimately again, the land is a gift. It's a gift, there's no restrictions on it. To which the Gemara says, the Sue, furthermore, the second case, bought the lab alone, he had relations with her, but he didn't. And if he didn't pay her anything, but even though my estimate, if he didn't pay her anything, what's the meaning of the statement in Jason? That says that a local entity, estimate, is not, doesn't make any sense. To which the Gemara says, hello. Listen to this. If he gave her, let's say, he gave her a sheep, and then only afterwards, in other words, let me tell you this. Something doesn't say like this. When do something become payment? When there's transactional immediacy. Okay, there are relations, right? Our relations pay. In other words, when there's immediacy, that's when it's an estimate. If there is a lack of transactional immediate estimate, so what that means practically is that it can be used ultimately again, let's say, for some type of sacrificial or temporal use. So watch this. Now, what does it mean? Rashi says, Akshav Ella La'akazman. Rather again, sometime later. Now, of course, how exactly do we go ahead and previously, I think there's some more comments today and that's 3 hours. Tomorrow, again, as opposed to payment relations. Baraka Fasala, as another oh, Esmana, in both of these cases, ultimately again, the esmana is going to be moved. However, Nasallah, the other half is not fine. Therefore, what we're saying is as follows, that essentially, in order for something to be categorized as an esmana zone, there has to be transactional immediacy. Once the transactional immediacy, in other words, payment relations, then the language payment has the status ultimately again of a harmless payment. Now, again, keep track of what's going on here. So remember, the household of Rabiana, they would borrow Shemitah produce from the poor and repay it ultimately again with fiat produce. People came to the Yochanan because they felt, I don't know, maybe it was a little bit strange the fact that you're transacting business with Shemitah from the Yochanan said, no, it's fine. Why? Same idea. There's no transactional immediacy. So because of transactional immediacy, we don't view that your produce as an exchange, right? Or as somehow like a payment ultimately again for the 7th year produce, the 3rd produce, and after the 8th year produce, we're just totally fine. Now the Gemara questions a little bit this testimony. No somehow the Achazak saw it. So again, let's go through this, right? Let's go ahead and take it. Right? Ruben is Rahel. Get your sheep. I'm just using this sheep because it's the easiest example. Right? So he pays your sheep. Right? And then let's say he gives your sheep on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, he has the sheep. So again, based on what we just learned before, that sheep does not have the status of a harvest payment, and therefore is not permitted for consecrated companies. Right? There's a lax transaction in this. It's on Wednesday, right? You give the sheep on calculations on Wednesday. So why did we say that when he does have a relationship with the top of something, Rechol Allah is the same. Obviously, I understand. When you give the sheep, can't be labeled as estimate so much. But when he does have a relationship with her on Wednesday, then that's actually he gets the use of this as a harvest payment to develop upon the sheep retroactively. And therefore the sheep can be categorized as an estimate zone of already Tuesday on Rabbi Lazar says it's very interesting that what's the case. She's talking about the Nikki Basa. This is very interesting. What happened? Zona, right? Zona got the sheep on Tuesday. She got the sheep on Tuesday. Now, relations didn't happen until Wednesday. She's nursing, but when they have relations on Wednesday, retroactively the sheep should be categorized as a harvesting. Oh, what's the case? She offered it up as a carbon on Tuesday. She offered up as a, you might say to yourself, come on, what a fake. She's a Zona, and she's offering that carbonos for sex. Important because many times in the past. What is important to understand? We all live in consistencies. And we all live with inherent contradictions. And in certain respects, I'm a Sadiq, and in certain respects, I'm a Masha. And there are things in my life that I do very well, and there are things in my life that I do very poorly, and there are things that I don't do well, or do poorly, or don't do at all, or Hashem, don't take away from the things that I do well and I'm righteous. You just I'm well thankful for that. Now, obviously, yeah, that's not the goal, right? The goal is to have a certain level of harmonious spirituality and righteousness in all areas of my life. And most of us are not there. Sometimes you feel hypocritical. Sometimes you feel like a fake because here, I'm learning Torah, but I'm doing this. Or I'm giving stuff out, but I'm doing this. Or I'm chesed, but I'm doing this. Right, it is hypocritical, but it's still a contradiction. But welcome to the nature of the human condition. We all live in hypocrisy, we all live in contradictions. Such is the nature of life. It is important for us not to lose faith in ourselves. And even though the zona is a zona, she also brings confidence. I guarantee you, those kabbalas are real. It's a pleasing aroma. Because at the end of the day, no one knows how struggle, some other and when you still push forward to do good, despite all the things that are broken, sometimes that's the pinnacle of being selfish. In any event, so the Zona offered up the covenants, but kinds of 10 relations occurred on Wednesday, the animal was already gone. She already offered it up. So you might say, okay, let's analyze this. Let's unpack this. If you what's the case? If the Amrullah community making the action, if you said, you said that the land on people, he says, this is yours as of today. Right? Apply this as of today. Right? Then, I'm not going to say, the story though. Right? So how let's start this class, obviously it's moving, right? Because she has the title to it. It can't be categorized as an S1 right? So essentially, gave her a gift, and if she has every right to offer it up. However, if you use the role on the left in the abstract, it's not in the title. But if you can ask her, you can say to her, this is your animal as of Tuesday, right? They're scheduled for relations on Wednesday. So what does it mean if you keep it this each country, right? And we have relations tomorrow. If that's the case, if he doesn't tell us to acquire it, it's not hers. It's not hers. And if it's not hers, he can be left in the title. I can suffer as a part after all. The acquisition is based on published on that one. So it says, if a person will consecrate his home, this is talking about an error evaluation. Right? Will go ahead and consecrate his home. I'm not one of my base of the shoe. So, just like your home, you own it, as published shoes. So to be able to consecrate, whether it's consecrate or whether it's for up, is something that you own. In other words, if she doesn't own it on Tuesday, they can have to suffer as a part of it. You know, you can only match something that is yours. In the realm of personal growth, God only asks of us what we're able to do. And that's not necessarily the right thing to do. We have role models to inspire to do it. But a lot of times we can compare ourselves to others and then we're frustrated and we don't measure up. But he says you can measure up to someone else. You don't know if this person's purpose or their abilities. But his ownership only asks you to be matched that which you own. You only have to consecrate, or you only can consecrate that which you own. You can't consecrate and it doesn't belong to you. You so often away and forget that the Rabbi only is of us. What we're able to do. He doesn't expect to do what someone else can do. He doesn't expect to do someone else's accomplishments. What he does expect to do is to take a personalistic inventory about all the spiritual tools that I possess. Be honest about what I possess. We possess a lot more than we're honest about. And then utilize those to personalistic holiness. Only be makdish that which belongs to you. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu only asks of us to accomplish spiritual things that are in our power, in our spiritual toolbox. Incredible. El Damallah, so what's the case? El Damallah, this is very interesting. So he says to her, right, he's just two things for tomorrow. He missed spiritually, but if you need the sheep for some reason, because it's something comes up, you need the sheep, I don't know, you're probably going to need to know what that's what higher than. It's interesting, fine, so where's this? No, everyone said that's the zone. And again, what's the idea? Why? Because you can remember, this all happened with the Rabbi, which is sheep. The idea that sheep, that what's happening over here is that something can only be vested in prohibited status when there is a level of transactional use. So now we see that by the Sheet case, and ultimately we see it by the essence of the Father case. Every merge gets over into the Father case. So by the way, come up with Kishasa It's very interesting. So let's say, same thing, Reuben gives Rachel, Reuben gives Zona the sheep on Tuesday. He is scheduled for Wednesday. On Tuesday, she goes in and she's not Christian. She consecrates it. She didn't offer it up as a not Christian. So what's the status now of the animal? Mami. Kivan da Amar Amiraso Legavo Misulaso Lehadio. Kiman Dakri Basitani. So do we say that essentially making something hektish is the equivalent of offering it up? In other words, literally, the Gemara says that verbally pledging something to a hektish is the equivalent of giving it over to a regular person. So therefore, do we say ultimately again that the act of going ahead and being makdish verbally is the equivalent of offering it up? In other words, offering it up is ultimately again, it is still here, it is still present. So does she have the ability? What happens if she was makdish it? Again, because I must say, you heard the shaila is, in the case where she offered it up on Tuesday, by the time the bia occurs, obviously again it's gone. It's gone, right? So it can't be called an esnan zona because it was no longer in existence at the time that the bia occurred. In this case over here, on Tuesday she's makdish it. Wednesday the object is still here. So now the shaila is, does the object become an esnan zona or not? So the said the tiv shamid Rabbi Eliezer. We give us Rabbi Elazar. So let's say going back, this is Rabbi Elazar on the top of the daf. Right? The Gemara says, Rabbi Elazar shekadma behekri vasa. So remember again, the way ahead, and she already offered it. Right? She offered it up already by the time that the dia occurred. Dafka hekri vasa. So dafka, it's because she offered it up, it's no longer in existence. Aval hekri shaso lo. But from Rabbi Elazar's statement, it would appear that if she was makdish, but the animal was still in existence at the time that the dia occurred, perhaps the animal would now be called an esnan zona. Much the Gemara says, no, the Rabbi Elazar who fake can be violated. The truth is, this shaila is manish shaila Rabbi Elazar himself. So the Gemara says, mine. Mifshat pshita Rabbi Eliezer dakri basal davka bakusha solo da isa b'shasbia. Does Rabbi Elazar say that the only time it doesn't become an esnan is when the animal was offered up according? But perhaps again, where she was just makdish, she consecrated it. The animal's still in existence at the time of the bia, in which case halacha l'maisa, the animal is recategorized as non-zona. All dilma hikrivasa pshitale vikishasa misatale. Or maybe no, maybe obviously if she offered it up and it's no longer in existence at the time of the bia, of course it's not going to be categorized as an non-zona. But in a case where she just consecrated it, we're not sure. To which the Gemara says, take it. So we're really not sure. So interestingly enough, for both sides, what comes out in this case over here is, first of all, so important lesson number one, because we're not finished with Esnan Zona yet. What we do understand is that in order for something to be categorized as an Esnan Zona, as a harvest payment, there must be transactional immediacy, which means payment, bia, or bia and then payment. Ultimately, again, it is not considered to be an Esnan Zona. If he deposited an animal with her for payments, now it's rights in that animal, therefore she goes ahead and she offers it up. It's a bona fide carbon. If she's makdish it, she consecrates it, and so the animal is still in existence at the time of the bia. The next day, what's okay? Let's analyze. So we're going to go side. The second case over here was, let's say he has relations with her, and then afterwards he pays her. So ultimately, again, the payment is mutter. When we say it's mutter, it means it can be used for consecrated sacrificial purposes. Or mini, the Gemara is a kasha. I don't understand this. The Gemara says, or mini. Ba'ala v'achakach nasana. At shalosh shanim esnana asa. But Rabbi says if Reuben has relations with the son, and then he pays her even 3 years late, 3 years late. Some people pay all of the bills late. Right? So he pays her late. Right? 3 years later, it's still called the harlot's payment, kasha. So in that context, so just important the rights that we quoted before on some page in the day 62, he said that if there's relations and then payment, that's not an estimate. It's no transactional immediacy. Here the Gemara says that there's relations, even if he pays her 3 years later, ultimately it is still usher. It's not a contradiction. Had the Amar his Ba'ali li bitalazeh, had the Amar his Ba'ali li bitalastan. So let's say this is very interesting. Ultimately, again, so we're talking one case, we're talking about a case where he says, have relations with me for this sheep, and he identifies the sheep, versus have relations with me for a sheep. Rashi, bitalazeh. So ultimately, again, the Gemara says when he identifies the sheep, when he doesn't go ahead and identify the sheep, then ultimately, again, there is no transactional immediacy. All right, so let's analyze a little bit more. My hobby, I understand. So let's analyze this, right? So now it's Wednesday. Ruben goes over to Rachel. He says, have relations with his wife. But yeah, he doesn't pay her for 3 years. 3 years. The halacha is, it has the status of a harlot's payment because there's transactional immediacy. Just because he identified the sheep, it doesn't make it hers. In order for it to be hers, what has to happen? The Gemara says, right? Remember, livestock, animals require sheep, or require taking possession, which the Gemara says, okay, so apparently it's actually interesting that ultimately the din of Mashiach is only a din by Jews. So apparently, again, by a non-Jew, they don't need Mashiach to acquire. So we're talking about a son who's not Jewish. So another possibility is the Olam Bezori Israelis. No, it's talking about a Jewish harlot. Ukigon de koi bechatzer. Oh, interestingly enough, the sheep standing in her chutzah. In which case, again, ultimately there's kiyum chutzah. She acquires it. Rest in a second. Either koi bechatzer, bala the achakach nasala hakaimala. Well, a second. I don't understand. And ultimately, again, then he gave it to her. Then he gave it to her. It's already in her chutzah. She already acquired it. What are we talking about here? The Gemara says, in other words, she acquired it before Bia. So this is like the paradigmatic case of Esnan Zona, because she's acquiring the sheep even before the Bia if the sheep is standing in her chutzah. To which the Gemara says, the Shati and Neheli Apotiki. Very interesting. Now, here's the case. So Ruben comes to Rachel and he says, listen, and I hear the tour. That in other words, he says to her, I'm going to pay you. I'm going to pay you for the relations, right? If I don't pay you money, you could take this sheep. So therefore, she doesn't really acquire the sheep initially. She acquires the sheep in the event that there is non-payment. The Amarla, and he says to her, if I pay you, let's say within the next 30 days, good. And if not, shakle de esnanif. Take this sheep ultimately again as your harlot payment. Fine. Master Rav Sheshes, or Rabbi from the Esnans of watch this. Omer Adam Lechamarav Ulapala. Let's say again, let's say Ruben employs donkey drivers and workers. Okay, so now he's paying. Now the way ultimately again he's paying them. Now Rashi points out over here, these workers are non-Jews or they're Amei. They're just unlearned Jews. Idolaters are unlearned Jews. Now let's see why this is important just a moment. And he says to them, right? So what's the halach? Okay. So actually, before we get to this, so he goes and he says to them, I'm paying you, and essentially go use this money to go ahead and purchase for yourself food and drink. Okay, either that's their payment or supplemental wages, whatever it is. He's giving them here, right? Here's money. Go and drink, go and eat. So we'll say now the Gemara says the you could do this She doesn't have to be worried. Some people base 63b. Lo mishum shlius, lo mishum meiser, lo mishum yayin nesach. I will say, here's what's interesting about this, right? What's the concern here? The Gemara says that halacha l'maisa, he's giving them money. Now, because it's an akum or amir aretz, he has to be concerned. Maybe the akum is going to go by yayin nesach, right? Or maybe ultimately again the amir aretz is going to buy shmita produce or meiser sheni produce in outside of Yerushalayim. He doesn't have to be concerned with this. Why doesn't he have to be concerned with this? Because essentially he's giving them the money and he's saying, Chevra, do what you want. Do what you want. Because he's doing that, essentially, it's not on him. Whatever they do, they do. Rashi says over here, okay, Rashi just goes through all of this. Right, if you look at the end, if you look at Rashi, Lo Mishum Meiser, right, if you look at Rashi, it's actually the last wide line, the last of the long lines, not Rashi. The Ha'ihu Lo Safilu Midi Ala Priti Yaim. We don't view, Ruvain is not the one giving them anything privately. Ruvain is giving them money. And it's Chavra, here, this is for your food, this is for your drink. What they choose to do with that afterwards, essentially, is not on Ruvain. It's not on Ruvain, so therefore, again, no liability. Okay, now watch. Contrast out the following case. Samach Yolave 63b, second line down. But if he said to them, Su ve'ichlu vani porea, Su shtu vani porea, but if he said again, I'll pick up the tab. Oh, now this is a problem. Then we have a problem. Now, why is that? Look at Rashi. Vani porea. The issue over here is because he's paying the tab, now it looks like he's purchasing and providing these prohibited items for his workers. So see the difference? If Ruvain just says, here's $100, that's nothing to do. If he says, go eat, go drink, I'll pick up the tab, then ultimately, again, that is problematic because it is if he is purchasing and providing these potentially prohibited items for his workers. Alma, what do you see from here? I'm not going to say this is we're now going ahead and circling back to the Rabbi case, right? We're going back now ultimately again to the Rabbi case of, remember, Rabbi, what did they do? They went ahead and they borrowed Shemitah produce and they repaid the poor with 8-year produce. Yochanan said, not a problem, there's no transactional immediacy. So I said, what do you see now? What do you see from this last year? Amo, ki kapara, the main Easter kapara. So what do you see from here? That when Ruvain pays the bill, right, so even though, again, he's paying after the consumption already took place, so there is transactional immediacy, and he is considered to be paying for these Shemitah products.
Yo, what up, pimp? How you living, baby? Slaying a dick like it's going out of style. What's good in your neck of the woods? I'm about to teach a class on Kabbalah. How about you? All right, you're a digital marketer. You're a digital marketer. I'm apologies. I didn't mean to cut you off. I didn't. Apologies. I didn't mean to cut you off. Tell me all about yourself, and then we'll talk. Okay, very cool. Do you have a link tree? Okay, excellent. Is it in your profile? Okay, just one moment. Let me take a look at it. That's what I'm talking about. A man with a link tree. Dog, I stream my life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for world peace. I've been doing so for more than 4 years. Yeah, big. It's pretty good, man. All right. Just one moment. I'm gonna send you a message on X. Okay, big dog. I'm gonna send you a message on X. Okay. Yo, Isaac. I'm gonna send you a message on X. Is that okay? Okay, just one moment. Um, how to increase your uh, social media marketing network. So I know that's what you do, but I noticed, like, do you have a YouTube account? Do you have do you have Instagram on there? Do you have TikTok on there? Do you have Reddit and Imager and Pinterest? Do you have? I don't see those on your link tree. Yeah, no, I understand, but you can have the messages sent to your email, and then whenever you get a message in your email, then you just respond to them. Look, I'm just telling you right now, if you want to market for someone and they say to you, okay, I'm going to give you some content, I want you to market it. Where are you going to be able to market it? Hold on, but your socials aren't good enough. Do you have a YouTube account? Wait, you have a business YouTube account on which to market somebody? Okay, excellent. Okay, do you have a Reddit account? No, I understand that. I understand it. But look, if I'm your customer, this is what I'm going to say to you. I get that you have a TikTok. That's great. Everybody's got a TikTok. I got that you've got a YouTube. That's great. Everybody's got a YouTube. I've got that you've got an Instagram. That's great. Everybody's got a YouTube. I've got that you've got or an Instagram. Everybody's got an Instagram. My project everywhere though. Reddit is one of those places. Pinterest is one of those places. Snapchat is one of those places. Places like Blue Sky is one of those places. Certainly things like Rumble and Twitch. Do you have those? Okay, that's good. Okay, why is it? Is it on your link tree? Okay, why not? Wait, but you have to understand. If I'm your customer, I expect you to have all this stuff. To me, you're not prepared. Now, you're doing really well. I'm being very aggressive and critiquing you. You're doing really well. But I'm just telling you, like as a customer, what I want you to have is all of this stuff very neatly organized for me as a customer so that I can just go through and say, wow, this person has a presence on all of these different social media platforms. I don't want to have to hear them say, well, I got my Reddit account banned and I've got to get back into it and I didn't add my Pinterest yet. You get what I'm saying, right? Excellent. So what I'm going to do, not even a link, it's just a message on X that has all of the different social media that you need. And if you get this social media, it's all free. Everything I tell you is free. You're going to be able to market yourself even better than you're doing right now. Here's why. Okay. But I'm going to give you 30 different social media platforms. Those are free. This gives you 30 times more places to be able to get business. It gives you 30 times more places for you to be able to promote your clients. It gives you 30 more places for you to be able to promote yourself. It helps you to dominate social media, AI, and search engine. Does this make sense? I hope it makes sense. Just one moment, Isaac. I'm I'm sending I'm sending you the message, and what I want you to do is just read it. So you can actually start checking your X messages right now, and if you start reading, everything that I say should make sense to you. And if it doesn't, let me know and I'll help you. You have an excellent work ethic, and I think that you've done a really good job. So, first and foremost, I'm congratulating you. Good job. You've got a link tree. You're already marketing yourself in some places. You can already go live on TikTok. That's great. All I want you to do is ensure that your profiles are as clean as possible. And some of the ways that you can do that is ensuring that they're all unified on your link tree. So I want you to check your X messages, Isaac, and then once you've checked your X messages and you've read them, if you have to read it twice, that's fine. There's a lot of information there. Talk to me and just let me know if what I say to you makes sense. Big dog, you're not busy right now. You're talking to me in an X space. I wasn't born yesterday. Take 2 minutes, read my messages, and then talk to me, and then you can go do whatever you need to do. Okay, all you have to do is just go to your X space, pardon me, your X messages, and read. That's all. You don't have to multitask. Just read the message. Once you've read the message and it makes sense to you, you do it, and you'll be a more successful marketer. You'll get more Oh, he left. Cool, cool. Yeah. This is horseshit. What's up, sluts? Welcome to day 18 of this bitch. Is it 18? I think so. That's high. That's life, baby. This is Pimp Kabbalah Chronicles, the Pimp Kabbalah Crash Course. Whatever you want to consider, that's what it is. All right. I'm going to be honest with you. I've been thinking about what the topic should be today. Um, I don't, I don't really know, but I'm not going to be reading a lot. This fucking app is going to be baller for me. I'm just going to sit here and listen to this bitch. I remember when I was in 5th grade, the teacher said, you can learn in one of 3 ways. Now, I'm sure there are more ways to do it, but she said you can read by reading, or you can learn by reading, by hearing, or by doing. And I think probably we do the best. There are other ways, though. Probably, I think the best way to learn is to teach, because you're going to get questions. It's going to ensure that you know the material really well. But just on those 3, on doing, on hearing, and on reading, seeing, listening, and doing. I think probably the best is doing. Um, but reading is good. But hearing, I feel, hearing while reading is like really important. Okay, so the Hebrew word for life is chai, which is the numerical value of 18. Consequently, a custom has arisen in Jewish circles to give donations and monetary gifts in multiple. Wisdom in the Talmud, Pirkei Avot 525, Rabbi Yehuda ben Tiameh gives the age of 18 as the appropriate age for chuppah. At 18 years old, to the chuppah marriage canopy, the coming of age of majority. The Amida prayer is known as Shemona Esrei. The Amida prayer is also known as Shemona Esrei. The Amida prayer is also known Shemona Esrei, which means 18 because it has 18 blessings. That's incorrect. It has 19 blessings. Really? Yeah. Does it? Yeah. Are you sure? Motherfucker, you could take a gun to the back of my head. That's how serious I know this one. It was originally 18, but then one was added. Dog, this shit is the worst.
Therefore, the Gemara says,
We still haven't gone to that footwork thing, but
here, ultimately, again, isn't that all paying for Shemitah produce? Same thing. Which the Gemara says,
just look it up.
So no, in the Ruben case, right, where he's going ahead and telling the workers, go eat food from a shopkeeper who normally extends credit to Ruben. ultimately, because the shopkeeper normally extends credit to Ruvain, ultimately there is transactional immediacy that's happening.
19 blessings.
Look at Rashi for just a moment.
Berkat Hamid. Fuck yeah.
The shopkeeper knows that it's
All
going
right.
to get paid from the bank.
So I know that one.
Some
Ribbons back.
Yeah. So that's it. There is transaction.
All them hemorrhoids. Kid, I'd be like, calm down 1 minute.
He's not just saying stand
We're doing
whatever you
okay.
want
I
and
probably
buy
should
food, buy
have
drink.
some
He's
more.
saying
Think about them.
normally extends credit to Ruben.
They're good.
So therefore, again, it's as
They
if
cause
the debt
pain.
is already
They
paid,
can
and therefore there's
make discomfort.
immediacy that's happening.
Let's learn about what
Rashi says,
my man quantity said about. I remember, he's a doctor. As one. What the fuck is this shit? Dog, quit with this bullshit.
But again, that doesn't apply in the case of right?
What does Rambam say about hemorrhoids? Of how they say so Rambo.
But again, using that logic, if we were to send out his work,
it's a joke. They drew first blood because
then it sounds like what?
Not Rambo.
It should be okay. If that's the case, then it's mutter.
Medically about hemorrhoids. I fucking know that he did. That's like one of the things that you could Ho Chi Minh City me on. Actually did write medically about hemorrhoids in the medical writings and reflected in Mishnah Torah. His core view was hemorrhoids are often caused by poor digestion, constipation, and strain. Diet and lifestyle habits in moderation are key. A commonly summarized Rambam style teaching is not direct, but most illnesses, including hemorrhoids, come from improper eating and excess. I probably agree with that. His recommended approach: high fiber foods, adequate hydration, physical movement, avoiding force during bowel movements, surgery only as a last resort.
And highlight two cases that are the same, but one detail different, then to highlight two dramatically different cases.
Rambam basically says you cause this by how you live, not fix the cause. Yeah, okay, so I knew he talked about it. Really? Yeah. I don't remember everything. I remember that. Alright. Now what? What are we learning today? I had a bunch of shit that was on the agenda from yesterday. Alright.
Do me a favor.
So we did Baruch Spinoza yesterday, which is like, I thought about that a lot. Like when I was going to bed, I'm like, man, we gotta get this motherfucker excommunicated. On Karen. Dog.
When you ask someone to go and give something to someone else, and ultimately, again, you're guaranteeing it, that encumbrance, that transactional immediacy.
Dude, but we've got to learn about Kabbalah. Something about Kabbalah every fucking day till I die.
You're right. You're right. At the end of the day, whether the shopkeeper...
Oh, dude, there was one... Hold on, did it not fucking say it? It was... I can find it, though. I know where it was. It was in Kabbalah. Kabbalah. And then... Or what a Jewish mysticism.
Go out, go eat and drink. I'll pick up the tab.
Hermetic Kabbalah. What is this? That's what we're going to learn today. I don't know.
Because it does ultimately, again, it should be money.
I mean, I think I know.
It should be money. I'm sorry. Gemara says,
It's a Western esoteric tradition. Okay, here we go.
So what do we need to be concerned about? Yishum Shvius. So the Gemara says, is a Western esoteric tradition involving mysticism and the occult. It is the underlying philosophy and framework for magical societies such as Hermetic or the Golden Dawn. This inspired esoteric Christian organizations such as Associates for Jihad and Anglia. In the Muslim groups, it is important to mystical religious societies such as the that perhaps, again, Shmita produce.
Right.
especially in Egyptian and Greco-Roman Neoplatonism, Hermeticism, and the symbolism of the term. Again, it differs from the Jewish ornament or syncretic system. However, it shares many concepts of Jewish teachings. Conception of divinity. A primary concern in Hermetic Kabbalah is the nature of divinity. Its conception of which is likely different from the primitive monotheistic religions. In particular, there is no extensive separation between divinity and humankind, which is the classical monotheism. The Kabbalah adheres to the Platonic conception that the manifest universe, material creation is a So
crime.
in the case
This
of
is
the
the
year,
emanations of the
ultimately,
Godhead.
again, when the Bryce
These
says
emanations
that
rise
if
up
Reuben
frequently in
says
various
to
states
his
of utterance
workers,
to receive
go
manifestation.
to the
First is
family,
the
go
state
to
of
the
complete knowing,
shopkeeper,
known as it.
eat and
Nothing.
drink
The second
whatever you
state
want, it's
consists of
on you.
concentration of man.
But
One
there's
is
no
light, and the
extension
nature
of
of this
prayer.
brilliance and
In other words, he has
manifestation
a
radiates
tab,
radiates.
but it's paid for
Sephir.
already. Oh, so
The
now that
emanations of
makes
creation arising
sense.
from man suffer one
Because
tenth.
now that it's
These are called
paid
Sephir.
for
Singular
already,
Sephir.
ultimately,
Enumeration.
again,
These
it's
are
big,
conceptualized
paid,
somewhat differently in
limited
Hermetic
things.
Kabbalistic way they are in
It's
Jewish Kabbalah.
literally like he's
As for
supplying them with
Christine
limited
the first Sephir
items.
of the Hermetic Kabbalistic tree of life.
I'm not
Can
gonna.
emanate from its
I'm
specific
Mr.
nature. As
Lishmaite,
Kaf.
Kamei
1,
Rav
Chum,
Zilmin
2,
Arba.
Bina, 3,
So the
Dot,
Gemara says
Cheese,
as
Dot,
follows.
Kaf.
All of
10.
this
Dot
is
is not
all
defined
under
enough
the
for it to be
same
considered a
realm
Rabbi or
of
Sephir.
transactional needs.
Each
Right?
Sephir is considered
That's
to be
the
an
theme.
agent of
That's
divine energy,
happening
often
over here.
described as the divine
So
light,
the Gemara
whichever
says,
flows
I'm
from
gonna
within
follow.
manifests.
Go
The
shit.
average
I'm sorry.
manifestation.
I'm gonna
This flow of
follow.
light is indicated
I'm used
by
to
the
the
light in
Shmaite,
flesh on
Kamei Rav
diagrams of the
Zilmin
Sephironic
Arba.
tree, which
So
passes
kind
through
of
each
said, I
Sephir in
set
turn
this
according to their
over
operations.
in front of Rav
Each
Zilmin
Sephir is a
Arba.
consistent divine energy that each has a number of attributions.
And
These
what happened?
attributions enable the analyst to
Amalei,
form a
he
comprehension of
haki,
particular Sephir's characteristics. This manner of applying the attributions to each Sephir is an exemplar of the diverse nature of Hermetic Kabbalah. For example, the
the
Sephir
Bryce
holds the
shouldn't
attributions of
be
glory,
that Reuben
perfect
says to his
intelligence, the age
workers,
of the Tarot,
go
the
out
planet
and
Mercury, the
go out
Egyptian
and
god Thoth,
drink,
the
and
archangel
I
Michael,
will
the
pay.
ruler of Mercury, and the
I
alchemical
will pay
element.
him.
The
Sound like he
general
hasn't
principle
paid.
involved is that the
Rather,
analyst will
what should
meditate
it
on all
say?
these attributions and by this means
Su'u
acquire an understanding of
ve'eklu,
the character of the
su'u
Sephir and
shesu
all its
bani
correspondences.
metzkash. You
2.
should
And the
say,
tree
go
of life.
out and drink, go out
Hermetic
and
Kabbalists
eat,
see the
and
cards
then
of the tarot's
I'll
keys to the tree of
settle
life.
up.
The 22 cards
Right?
including the 21
I'll
drums plus the
settle
full
up
0 card of
ultimately
the
again
major
with the
arcana of greater
shopkeeper.
mysteries and
Because
verses corresponding to
we're
the
saying
dimension
out
being
of
letters
case
of
over
the
here
Hermetic
where
paths
we
of the
didn't
tree.
prepay.
Base to 10 and H2
Right? So
correspond to
you
10
left
Sephir
money
and
with
the
the
4 Kabbalistic
shopkeeper,
quirks.
then it's
And
a
the
question
16
of
cards
saying,
relate to the
yeah, I
classical
left
elements
you
and form worlds and
I
forms.
left you
Find the nature of
how
divinity. The
much
paths
should
between
you
them describe ways of knowing the divine.
you're right. You're right. Tony,
According to the Hermetic approach, the golden
I'm
dawn
sorry.
interpretation of the Kabbalah. There are 10 archangels. Each commanding one of the choirs of angels and corresponding to one of the Sephir. We This don't necessarily
change the
hierarchy.
price of the price should
History.
really be the following way.
Hermetic views of Kabbalah
That
origins.
halacha
The practice of using alphabetic
so
letters to
please
represent
remember,
numbers developed in the Greek city
there
of
are two
Phoenix,
cases
and is
in
most known as
Christ.
the Phoenician system.
Case
Early
number one
examples include Greek
is where
graffiti dating
Reuben
to the
gives his
6th century BCE,
representative
documented
go out
Korean
and eat,
tradition,
but and
founded
drink
in the 6th century
on
BCE by
that
Pythagoras and
case,
Samos, practiced by
whatever they
Sisyphus,
do,
the
it's
Greek
on them.
predecessor of Jewish
It's
Demetria.
not on them.
Pythagoras was a contemporary of the
Case
philosophers
two, the way the
Anaximander,
Muslims
Anaximenes,
understanding
and
now,
the historian
is that
Epiphanius, all of whom
halacha
lived in
so
Miletus.
Reuben
Apostasy from Samos. The Phoenician
prepaid
system was in common use by
he
the
went
Greek
ahead and gave
Alexander the Great.
$100 to the
336
shopkeeper. He
323
said,
BCE, it was
my
adopted by
worker's
other
going to come
religious
in,
groups of
let
Hellenistic
them
period.
buy,
It was
let them
officially
eat,
adopted
let
in
them
ancient
drink.
Pergamene and
Okay?
Ptolemaic Philadelphus
Now
in
the Gemara
284
says,
to 526
that's the
BCE.
problematic. So we have to be
In Isis
concerned
revealed in the
if
sacred
he
doctrine, 19th century
had
Theosophists Galen and
access
Lavassier
now
wrote
to
that Hermeticism and
the
Kabbalah
three
ultimately both
items,
taught the
then
same sacred teachings as
if
Neoplatonism and
Reuben
Hindu
is going
philosophy. In
ahead
the 20th
and
century,
so
Persians
I'm
followed
going
by
to
hypothesized that
the
medieval
way
Kabbalah
that
is
price
considered a
should
near
read
Jewish
is
version of
Reuben says to his
Gnosticism.
workers,
However, contemporary
so
scholarship of Jewish mysticism has largely rejected it. However, see
again
Kabbalah
with
is
the
originating in
shopkeeper.
classical Greece based on
That's
Indo-European
what
culture
the Gemara
roots and
says.
ultimately
We're
adopted by Jewish
we'll stop
mysticism.
over here for today.
Renaissance
Oh yeah,
Gnosticism.
everyone, have a
Jewish
job.
Kabbalah was absorbed into the Hermetic tradition of Platonism, Aristotelianism, Hermeticism, and Kabbalah. Byron Cornelius Agrippa, 1486-1535, Roman magician, theologian, astrologer, and alchemist, wrote the influential three books of occult philosophy, incorporating Kabbalah and its
Let's say
myriad
good
practice of
morning. It
Western
is a
magic.
great
It contributed strongly to the Renaissance view of ritual magic's relationship with Christianity. The
begin
approach
by
of Hermetic syncretism was further
all
developed by
of our
Athanasius Kircher,
sponsors
Jesuit
for
Greek.
this morning
Hermeticism
to thank our annual Talmud Torah sponsors,
1652,
Shloch Avaretz Yisrael,
such as
for
Orphism,
dedicating
Egyptian
all the Shurim Drushos this
19th
year.
century magical and
Talmud Torah
Kabbalistic writings
sponsors
of
for the
nature.
month of
Francis
Av.
Barnes the Magus,
How Barney told
1801,
us even
handbook
when
of
the
ceremonial
grazing in
magic
honor
and
of
ritual
Israel
system,
grazing,
which
Junior
magical abilities
grazing,
anonymously.
Eileen
1810
roses white
1875,
and
45
Stanley
presented
roses
Catholicism
white
as
to
anonymous
Tony
worldwide
Bracha.
and
We
black
got
magic.
learning
Revised
sponsors,
iterations of
Aaron
which have
School,
remained authentic
Shalom,
and represented
Ben
Western
Tzvi
magic.
Hirsch,
Contained and adopted
and
magical
Nathan, and
Hermetic
by
art and
our
knowledge.
memory of their father,
Hermetic art
Ben
and
Abba,
knowledge.
Chaver Baruch
Hermetic
Mordechai
Kabbalists
Ben
developed
we dedicate our learning in the Swiss countries to talk to Nefesh and bring home Shalom and Karaf and Merit Prophecies, so give them success, the call on mercy. Also, with that, let us begin. We have an exciting daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Samech Gimel 63, and we are picking up on Samech Gimel days 62b, today Rabbi Yana, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 lines up from the bottom. So the Gemara says as follows: Today Rabbi Yana, Yas Ite Shlias Na'im, Uparlu B'Shmiras. A very interesting case over here. The members of the household of Rabbi Yana, and then repay them with 8-year produce, 9-year produce on the following year. So if you look at that, she says that there's no way Yasi she is called in this Malabia. So obviously, again, without getting into all the super technicalities of it, but halacha l'maisa, you can go ahead and lend or borrow, not commerce, but lend or borrow shoes the produce while it's still in the field. You really can no longer kind of keep it for yourself. So over here is, so the people of the Asa Rabbi, they borrow shoes the produce from the Ani and during the Shemini. Rashi goes on. Part of the Shemini so what ended up happening again is on year number 8, we people of Rabbi's house and repay the onion, ultimately again with this new produce, 8-year produce. So they came and they said, so people mentioned this practice of Yochanan. Something about it, obviously, that bothered people to some degree. So they said something to Yochanan. Yochanan said, yeah, we see often perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. Why? Net gun, never say that. Interesting enough, the Yochanan said, the members of the house of Rabbi are acting totally fine. Rashi says, even that he shanta, lo habu hanach be'en, lo ichnufe han ba'ani, we saw yesterday back already, when you get into an issue of potential commerce with a forbidden item, so sometimes that forbidden identity, instead of this looks like one's transacting business to cheap the produce, that even the 8-year produce should ultimately have the same produce with the prohibition. But the Yochanan said it's not really a problem. Why? Because there's not a reciprocity, there's not immediacy. I would say there's no immediate reciprocity. Because there's no immediate reciprocity, therefore this does not look like you're doing commerce with cheap produce, and it's produce. That's the idea here. Therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, and therefore, again, the same thing will not follow upon the instead of the S non. And interestingly enough, a similar case would come up with S non zone.
Right. Well, since today's the 18th day, maybe we learn about gematria today as well, and I'd like to. So we can just fly through this shit so much faster. Please end the thing first, huh?
It cannot be used for any type of sacrificial purposes. Makes
Please
sense.
end TTF
Listen to this.
first.
The sign of the says the corresponding piece by Esna was the case. The sign listen to this. Rice says, no. Let's say Ruben goes to Rachel. Right, Ruben goes to Rachel, and ultimately again he gives her this, and he gives her right, but he doesn't have relations with her. Or he has relations with her, but it doesn't pay her anything. What's the her heart's payment ultimately is more to sacrifice. Obviously, it doesn't make sense. If he gave her, let's say he gave her a lamb, he gave her a sheep, and he didn't have relations with her, then of course it's permitted for a carbon. Why? Even though he didn't have relations with her. So if you didn't have relations with her, then ultimately again, the lamb is a gift. If it's a gift, there's no restrictions on it. To which the Gemara says, if you have relations with her and you didn't pay her anything, ultimately didn't pay her anything. If you didn't pay her anything, my estimate if you didn't pay her anything, then what's the meaning of the statement in Rice that says that Allah is the estimate is mutter? Doesn't make sense. To which means Allah, that is what it means to say. Listen to this. Nasala, the Akhat, if he gave her, let's say, he gave her the sheep, and then only after, in other words, what we tell you, he's outside. So this is what we say like this. When does something become an S1 and S1 on a harvest when there's transaction Hazer relations, right? Our relations pay. In other words, when there's immediacy, that's when it's an estimate. If there is a lack of transactional immediacy, then the payment does not take on the status of S. So, and what that means practically is that it can be used ultimately again, let's say, for some type of sacrificial or temple use. So, watch this. Was Elisama, Rasallah, if you gave her the sheep, the Afrikat Bala. Now, what does it mean, the Afrikat Bala? Rashi says, Ashok, Ella, and later. Now, of course, how exactly do you go ahead and translate immediacy? I think there's some more common sense. You know, today, and after for 3 hours, or tomorrow, again, as opposed to payment relations. Baraka Rasallah, as none of them. Oh, Bala, the Afrikat Bala. Or for that matter, if he has relationship and then he is actually a placer, Esnana, in both of these cases, ultimately again, the Esnana is going to be however, Nasallah, the Akarka, is now fine. Therefore, I will say, so what you want to say is this that essentially, in actual once it's the actual immediacy, in other words, payment relations, then the line, the sheep, the payment, has the status ultimately again of a harvest payment. Now, again, remember, the household of Rabbi, they would follow Shemitah for no, it's fun. Why? Same idea. There's no transaction. Because of the actual immediacy, we don't view that your produce as an exchange, right? Or as somehow like a payment again for the 7th-year produce, the 8th produce, and after the 8th-year produce remains fine.